Before I let you guys go, I need predictions. Does it get approved or does it not? And if it gets approved, what is the 24-hour capital inflow?
You can go first, Eric. I feel like you're much
Ooh,
better at guesses.
good question. So I've already bet a steak dinner with Todd Rosenbluth. It will get approved. Now my record with him is 3-2. So do with that what you will. I'm not betting on the SEC changing. I'm just betting on BlackRock knowing something. That's what I'm betting on. I'm betting on BlackRock is not a firm that plays around, and they have a lot of intelligence, knowledge, and they don't want to get rejected. I mean, that's just not what they do. Like I said, I just tweeted out their record of getting ETF filings approved is 575-1. That's a pretty good record. So I'm going to bet on that record and bet on BlackRock, and I think there'll be approval by the end of the year.
What was that record? You said it's 570 and one?
They've had 575 ETFs approved and only one rejected.
And why did they have that one rejected? Do we know?
It was an active, non-transparent structure. And at the time, the SEC was still wrestling with this new structure that would hide the holdings, and they weren't quite ready for it.
But they exist now. They
do exist now. So it wasn't, but at the time they did get rejected on that. So like I said, it's possible. If I had to give you a percentage, I'd probably go 50-50. But I decided to take the bet with Todd just because I like having dinner with him anyway. And I like to see him squirm. If there's news, I like to troll him. And so we'll have a good time over the next 6 months. But I'd say 50-50. I think BlackRock just changes so many dynamics of this. I was stunned, shocked. I still am. And this is sort of taken over my brain. I had so many other things going on. I'm actually going on vacation next week too. But this is a huge deal. So that's where, and the amount of money it would take in, I don't see it breaking GLD's record of $1 billion in 3 days.
Well, it's BITO's record. BITO did it in 2 days.
That's right. BITO did it. By the way, BITO tracks the futures. It actually tracks spot really well. Like people were all worried the futures wouldn't do a good job, but I got to be honest, it's very good. Like if you want Bitcoin exposure in ETF, BITO is it's fine. I get it though. People like the physical thing. They want this stuff stored. They want to know where it is and they want it to track perfectly. But BITO is underrated, I thought. I thought it did a fine job over the past 2 years or so doing it. I'd say maybe I'd say maybe in the first day, a couple hundred million, and then like $1 billion by the end of the week, and then maybe like 10 billion in like 6 months or so. Something like that would make sense to me. Just because there is going to be a bunch of unmet demand of people who are just waiting for an ETF. They'll move over quickly. We'll call those like already waiting people. The question is beyond that, how much organic interest is there? It might not be as much as there was 2-3 years ago when we predicted this would be such a big deal, simply because in the meantime, we've had a bear market and FTX.
James?
Yeah, so I also think it's going to be approved. So that I talked about those 240 days, depending on when BlackRock submits their 19B4 application, the earliest it probably could happen is sometime in late February, probably very late February, early March, where it would be the ultimate end deadline. But I do think I think it's going to be approved. I can't think of any other issuer that if they filed that it would change my thesis on whether or not we're going to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. BlackRock is like as strong as it gets for an indicator on where the SEC is leaning. The other thing I'm going to say is obviously kind of unrelated to the ETF side of things. Coinbase is being sued by the SEC for operating unlicensed securities exchange, all of these things, right? But one thing that's not up for question here is Bitcoin. And I kind of wonder if Gary and the SEC are like, we already said that Bitcoin's not a security. We know it's a commodity. We're not even arguing that, while they're arguing Ether, which I think is also ridiculous, but that's a different story. They might just be like, we'll just let this ETF, the Bitcoin ETF thing go, because we need to go after all these other situations with these other level ones like Solana and what have you. Like, so they're going after Coinbase for those other things, and they're not really worried about Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be surprised if there might be some changing of the tune within the SEC, because I really don't understand the reasoning behind like continuing to not deny these things. So yeah, and then as far as money goes, I don't know if it would break the BITO's record of $1 billion in 2 days. I don't think it would potentially, but I mean, it's not a crazy thing to think. This thing will get billions of dollars within the first 6 months, I would guess, assuming Bitcoin doesn't half in price again. But that's a that's a different situation.
I'm going to join you guys, and as we know, predictions are stupid and we're never right. But
Yeah.
I think it gets $1 billion in the first day,
All right.
and it's just
It could.
they just have
If
they just
anything
have the
could pull it off, that's
distribution.
an iShares. Yeah,
Yeah, they just
you're
have the
right.
distribution, right? I think it's just given my very limited knowledge of the ETF world, if you said to me like, what is the thing that could do it in 24 hours? It kind of feels like it's got to be something that isn't traditional asset, right? So you get Bitcoin. It's got to be with a large issuer like a BlackRock, and then it's got to be something that people are talking about in the media, and you need that media attention. And just given yesterday, just the prospectus alone, everyone is yelling and screaming about it on the internet, and it just feels like if something was going to do it, why not this?
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially if Bitcoin is going on a run or in a bull market, like we saw in late 2021. I think that the billion in 24 hours is easily doable. But obviously, in the current environment right now, with how people are looking at crypto and the way flows are going into ETFs like this, I would say it's kind of unlikely. But again, the earliest this thing would get approved is likely in like 45 days, the absolute earliest from when it files the 19 before, I believe. So you're likely waiting longer than that. So there's plenty of time period between now and the beginning of 2024 that things could change in the underlying Bitcoin market.
Also, $1 billion isn't like when GLD did it. That was in 2004 when $1 billion was like $1 billion. Like it's a little less impressive. So yeah, I hear you. $1 billion wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's just say this: it's going to be a big, liquid, low cost to trade, and likely over time low cost area. ETFs are one of the most disruptive forces out there. So if I'm in the crypto world and I see this, especially if I work in an exchange, I am starting to think of plans to compete with the ETF.